Hi, I'm an associate solicitor here at TLT, and in this bite-sized session, I'm going to talk through the covered procurement objectives under the Procurement Act 2023, the National Procurement Policy Statement, and on social value. I specialise in advising on public procurement law, as well as on complex commercial contracts within the public sector and on matters such as grant funding within the public sector space. So this session will focus on the 5 topics listed here, namely, what are the new objectives? Where have the principles gone? What are the rules around the National Procurement Policy Statement? What are the rules around the Social Value Act 2012? And how these rules might impact bidding behaviours. So what are the new objectives? Under the new regime, there are several objectives which contracting authorities must have regard to throughout their procurement. It should be noted that it is not clear yet how we should interpret the phrase "have regard to the importance of." However, we expect that the guidance will state that "have regardance to the importance of" means that they must consider and demonstrate compliance with these objectives when procuring. However, there is some query as to whether this allows greater flexibility to contracting authorities in not considering some of the objectives where it does not deem it necessary to do so. This should become clearer once the Cabinet Office publishes its guidance under the covered procurement objectives under the Procurement Act 2023. So, under the Act, contracting authorities must have regard to the importance of treating suppliers the same, unless a difference is justified. So if you, as a supplier, feel that you have been treated differently, this may be allowed under the new regime. However, the difference will need to be justified. You should consider if you understand the justification, assuming that it hasn't already been set out in the procurement documents. Sharing information. You, as a supplier, should have enough information which has been made available to you by the contracting authority to be able to understand the authority's procurement policies and decisions. Duty to small and medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs. Generally speaking, SMEs should find it easier to participate in procurements under the Act, as contracting authorities should put themselves in an SME's shoes and consider whether it can reduce or remove any barriers to participation which SMEs might face. Delivering value for money. For example, how quality and price can be balanced for both the contracting authority and the wider industry. Maximising public benefit, such as whether there are opportunities for the contracting authority to share resources and reduce costs by working with other authorities, and whether there are opportunities to deliver social value benefits. Acting and being seen to act with integrity. Is the contracting authority acting and being seen to act in a way which is preventing fraud, corruption, and misconduct, for example? So where have the principles gone? The outcomes under the new regime are slightly different to those principles in the outgoing regime, namely to treat economic operators equally, without discrimination, to act transparently, and to act proportionately. While there are differences between the principles and the new objectives, the considerations expected of contracting authorities when conducting a procurement are fundamentally the same. The language has changed, but the content and intent remains consistent. It is important for suppliers to be aware of these objectives, because if you consider that a contracting authority is acting outside of any of these objectives, it may be a point that can be queried or challenged. And as suppliers, the key thing to note is that you are still to be treated the same, unless a difference is justified, whereas before you were required to be treated equally. Whilst the former principles of non-discrimination and proportionality are not expressly noted as objectives, they can be seen as specific obligations under the Act. And similarly, the former principle that contracting authorities had to act transparently is seen throughout the objectives under the new Act. For example, in sharing information to allow suppliers to understand procurement policies and decisions. So what are the rules around the National Procurement Policy Statement? Alongside these objectives, the Procurement Act also sets out a power for ministers to publish a National Procurement Policy Statement to set out the national strategic priorities for public procurement. There is also a power for Welsh ministers to publish a procurement policy statement for Wales. Under the NPPS, contracting authorities must have regard to the NPPS, and within that should consider the national strategic priorities in carrying out their procurements. The latest version was published on the 13th of May, and presently the national priorities relate to value for money, which contracting authorities must place at the centre of their procurement activities and look to achieve the best use of public funds, considering effectiveness, efficiency, and economy to deliver the procurement goals. Social value outcomes. The NPPS details social value outcomes, which a contracting authority should consider where relevant and proportionate. These relate to business resiliency, employment opportunities, skills development, improving innovation, supply chain resilience and security of supply, climate change and reducing waste, and any additional local priorities. Notably, the NPPS notes that the burden put onto suppliers to deliver social value should not be too heavy. For example, by contracting authorities setting disproportionate obligations in contracts or tenders for suppliers to deliver such benefits through the procurement. SMEs. Public procurement is to be opened up to more SMEs to achieve growth and competition in the marketplace. Contracting authorities should seek to reduce or remove barriers to SMEs for participation in procurement processes, i.e., considering response times for SMEs to submit their tender. Commercial procurement and delivery. Contracting authorities to consider that they have the right internal infrastructure, policies and processes in place to manage commercial delivery. Contracting authorities should consider the government's playbook series, the best practice and guidance, as well as any sector-specific playbooks, such as the construction playbook, to consider how the guidance can be applied to their organisation. Skills and capability for procurement. Contracting authorities should review their skills and capability to consider if they are both able to effectively deliver the procurement whilst also delivering value for money. NPPS priorities and how they might impact bidding. So taking each of the NPPS priorities in turn and considering how they might impact your bidding. When it comes to value for money, it will be helpful to consider how you as a supplier or contractor can demonstrate delivering value for money. Some procurements may even include an explicit requirement for suppliers to demonstrate value for money in their bid. You should be clear when bidding that you are demonstrating the solution which you are bidding within budget and that you are delivering as much as you can for value for money. Social value. Procurements often include a dedicated question or requirement to deliver added value or public benefit. It will be helpful to consider how you as a supplier can demonstrate social value outcomes in your bid, thinking about things such as economic, social, and environmental benefits, beyond just the delivery of the solution, and making sure that it positively impacts people and communities. SMEs. Suppliers who are SMEs should feel that the playing field is levelled to allow them to participate in procurements. This could be by a contracting authority setting simpler procedures, for example, making sure the procurement or associated tender documents are clear and simple, and allow SMEs sufficient time to respond and participate. Additionally, it might involve contracting authorities only requiring you to have specific standards and accreditations where absolutely essential, as many SMEs are unlikely to be able to afford the same. If suppliers don't consider that these types of things have not been set objectively by a contracting authority when setting their procurement, then you may be able to challenge this. Skills and capability for procurement. It is helpful for a supplier to be aware of this in the event that there is a situation where the supplier considers that the contracting authority does not have the skills and capability to deliver the procurement and therefore could challenge on this basis. Commercial and procurement delivery. Suppliers should feel as though best practice and guidance, including sector-specific best practice and guidance, is being followed by contracting authorities in their commercial and procurement delivery. So what are the rules around the Public Services Social Value Act 2012? So under the Social Value Act, contracting authorities must consider social value in their procurements. Under the outgoing regime, this was tightened by Procurement Policy 0620, whereby social value was to be evaluated and not just considered in all central government procurements where relevant and proportionate. Where the Procurement Act goes beyond this is in setting out, as part of its objectives, how it is maximising public benefits. And contracting authorities will therefore be specifically required to demonstrate their consideration of economic, social and environmental aspects where developing their procurement strategy. Suppliers now need to qualitatively demonstrate that they will deliver the relevant social value throughout the life of the contract, and they will be held to their social value proposal. So a contracting authority may look to deliver social value either through the social value model or the social value portal. So how might the social value model impact bidding? Each of the 5 themes included in the social value model includes one or more outcomes. So tackling economic equality, things such as creating new businesses, new jobs and new skills, increasing supply chain resilience and capacity, fighting climate change, thinking about effective stewardship of the environment, equal opportunity, thinking about reducing the disability employment gap, tackling workforce inequality, for example, well-being, improving health and well-being, improving community integration, and COVID recovery as well. Then within these outcomes, the model includes various sample questions and guidance on the information that suppliers should provide when responding to these questions. Although authorities can use these questions as published, along with the published scoring matrix, they can also tailor them to their requirements. And so suppliers need to be careful to read and respond to what is being asked and not just copy and paste from a previous tender. Furthermore, suppliers are reminded that when answering these questions, the proposals must relate to the subject matter of the contract and deliver actual quantifiable public benefits in line with the new objectives in Section 12 of the Procurement Act. Vague comments and working with the authority, if successful, is just not going to cut it. Also, even where a contracting authority has created their own award criteria, so questions and assessment methodology, suppliers should use the social value model or portal along with the NPPS as inspiration. The TOMs in particular include a really helpful list of public benefits that a supplier could offer as smart social value and public benefit. So looking at comparing the rules that we've discussed today, although when looking at each of these sets of rules in isolation, they could appear conflicting and maybe a challenging mess. When you actually map them side by side, you can clearly see that they are all based on common themes and outcomes and are interchangeable when looking at how to meet the objectives under the Act. This slide, therefore, just helps to set out a comparison of the various rules that we have discussed and how they link up with one another. So our team is shown on this slide, and if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact myself or any of my colleagues on this slide. And finally, just to quickly talk about our Procuring 360 initiative, which is TLT's support package for both contracting authorities and public sector suppliers in terms of getting ready for the new Procurement Act. We are able to offer a wide range of support, which is not just legal, but also technical and consultancy and more practical support as well. So please do have a look at our website or contact a member of the team if you require any further support in relation to getting ready for the implementation of the new Act. Thank you.